Monetary policy was created to control GDP growth. GDP is the monetary value of goods and services our country produces in a year. GDP is reported quarterly and is used to determine if our economy is growing, shrinking, or unchanging from quarter to quarter or year to year. Monetary policy is implemented by the Federal Reserve banking system in the United States. While independent from the government, the President of the United States appoints the chairman of the Fed once every 4 years. Before monetary policy, we had a 4-year business cycle of a couple years of boom, followed by a couple years of bust. This hurt chances for new businesses to survive and for workers to have steady employment. If the GDP growth rate is too fast, it might cause inflation, especially when we are at full employment and asset utilization levels. Such growth rates are not sustainable, so the Fed tries to keep them from occurring. Someone figured out that if we could replace the wildly fluctuating boom and bust segments of the business cycle with tamer boom and bust segments, it would lead to better chances for new businesses to survive due to less severe bust segments, while tamer boom segments would help protect us from the unacceptable high inflation rates. This means more successful businesses, fewer worker layoffs, and much better overall sustainable GDP growth rates. In other words, a much better economy. To better understand how monetary policy works, you need to understand why some products are interest rate sensitive. The discussion now is before credit card usage was widespread. Back then, if a person wanted a washing machine, a dryer, automobile, truck, etc., they would have to get a loan because of their inability to pay cash for such a big ticket item. At any given point in time, many thousands of people want to buy a car and could buy one by getting a loan at the current interest rate. But many of those people would not be able to afford to buy a car if the interest rate were to increase by as little as 1/8%. The same is true for almost all big ticket items, especially a home. The Fed uses monetary policy to keep the GDP from growing faster than a sustainable growth rate by taming the boom segment of the business cycle. The Fed buys and sells bonds. When a bond is sold, money is taken out of the money supply and appears as cash on the Fed balance sheet. When a bond is bought, cash from the Fed is paid out and enters into the money supply. If the Fed buys more bonds than they sell, the money supply grows larger. If the Fed sells more bonds than they buy, the money supply shrinks. To tame the boom segment of a business cycle, the Fed will sell more bonds than they buy to shrink the money supply, which will cause interest rates to climb. Higher interest rates will lead to fewer cars, trucks, homes, washers, etc. being sold, leading to fewer orders, leading to layoffs, leading to lower purchasing power, less tax revenue, bigger budget deficits, lower quality of life for the laid off workers, and sometimes lower prices for some items. To tame the bust segment of a business cycle, the Fed will buy more bonds than they sell to grow the money supply, which will cause lower interest rates. Lower interest rates will lead to more cars, trucks, homes, washers, etc. being sold, leading to more orders, leading to callbacks, leading to more purchasing power, more tax revenue, lower budget deficits, better quality of life for the called back workers, and sometimes higher inflation rates. Here are a few of our thoughts. First, since interest rates often impact GDP, we often see stock prices increase with lower interest rates and decrease with higher interest rates. Second, the Fed can always choke off fast GDP growth by shrinking the money supply and causing higher interest rates. Third, when the Fed lowers interest rates by growing the money supply, it only means the Fed is getting out of the way of the economy. Whether or not economic growth follows depends on the innovations and creativity of our citizens and businesses. Fourth, when someone tells you a politician or a political party created jobs, you should ask them, how did they do it? Maybe they really did do something. E.g., maybe one state offers a business in another state better tax treatment. That doesn't create jobs. It just moves them from one state to another. We know that would help the business, but how did it impact the workers in the previous state? And in the new state, are the workers paid at least an equal wage benefit compensation package? If they did do something to create more jobs, ask them how many they created and how many were created by monetary policy. Don't just accept created jobs stats without considering monetary policy, since monetary policy is designed to stimulate and depress job growth. Fifth, since monetary policy chokes off high GDP growth rates by decreasing demand for interest rate sensitive goods built in mass manufacturing facilities by unskilled workers, those workers are among the first to be laid off and last to be called back. Those who earn the least and have the least wealth are impacted most by monetary policy, while many others suffer little to no impact. Sixth, some observe that monetary policy has lost its effectiveness and should be abandoned, but never explain why it no longer works well. Monetary policy controls GDP growth rates by controlling demand for big ticket interest rate sensitive goods by controlling the money supply and interest rates. Since many interest rate sensitive goods are manufactured, monetary policy primarily impacts manufacturing production levels. Manufacturing as a percentage of our total economy has been in decline for close to 50 years now and is a much smaller percentage of our total economy. Thus, less of our total economy is from manufacturing today and is the obvious reason for the decrease in monetary policy effectiveness. The Cower Project has concluded that monetary policy should not be abandoned, but should be utilized about 10% as much as it is now. The Cower Project has developed a new model for determining tax rates and should be used as the primary method to control GDP growth rates instead of monetary policy. At times, monetary policy can be used effectively to supplement our new taxation method. To learn more about better taxation, watch the Cower Project New Taxation Model video on the Cower Project LLC YouTube channel.